Next up is Tanya Vacarda, who is in Echo Cybersecurity Ops Service and an Innovate UK award winner with over 13 years of complex project experience in cybersecurity. I had the absolute pleasure of seeing this talk last week, and I left with both my mind blown and a little bit of paranoia, so we'll see how we get out of this now. So please welcome Tanya for her talk on AI deepfakes.
Thank you, guys. Can you hear me okay if I stand like this? Hi, hello. So nice to see familiar faces here. So thank you so much for a lovely introduction. So I'm going to repeat some of the stuff. So my name is Tanya Vacarda. I'm a founder, designer, and a consultant with a kink for cyber fraud and social engineering attacks. Over the last 15 years, I've been lucky to work in both technology and luxury industries, orchestrating multi-million initiatives in cybersecurity and digital solutions delivery. With that, my education background has nothing to do with technology, but everything with communication systems, cultural and social narratives, and trend identification, which means identifying patterns and anomalies. And today we're going to look at what happens when social hacking meets technology. So it's not secret that in the last few years, AI and deepfake technologies have been getting better and more affordable, more accessible, which makes a lot of social engineering fraud attacks much more realistic and successful. So here is a map of AI and deepfake-powered fraud increase cases over the globe per country between 2022 and 2023. And these numbers are percentages. So, for example, if you look at Europe and USA, up to 3,000% increase within 1 year, and up to 4,500 Philippines 1 year. According to sources like Kaspersky, FBI, and the US Department of Homeland Security, the top deepfake fraud scenario threats right now are business identity fraud, pornographic deepfakes, financial or investment fraud, and recruitment fraud. So this is a quote from DHS, the US Department of Homeland Security. And their report predicts that in the near future and right now, we're going to witness a shift from high impact, low probability, very targeted spear-phishing attacks such as business identity fraud. We're going to have a look at a couple of those cases towards low impact but very high probability widespread attacks such as recruitment scam, investment scam, and romance scams. That means that every person sitting here can and will be target of a deepfake attack in a very near future. But it's not all gloomy. Even despite very sophisticated technology use, not all of these attacks are successful. Yes, a lot of people fall victims to such attacks, but there are those who are able to identify the signs of funny game without the aid of any technology. So we're going to have a look at several cases and see what happens and what's the difference between them. We're going to start with this high impact, low probability, very elaborate spear-phishing attacks. In the first case, this is a recent case, you might have seen it recently. The scammers targeted a Hong Kong-based worker of a large financial corporation company. So what happened? That's the scenario. So a worker received a email from a UK-based chief financial officer asking them to carry out a transaction that was worth over $25 million in secrecy. So at this point, the worker thought it was a phishing email. But then it followed by a request invitation to a video call that included their work colleagues. And during this call, the CFO present and work colleagues confirmed that the request was real. So they were all present there. So after that meeting, the worker went ahead, completed that transaction, and then reached out to the head office to verify details. And that's when it was discovered that was all a fraud. None of the work colleagues attended the call. The scammers use very sophisticated voice and video clones to impersonate the people that worker knew, including CFO. So that was very targeted, elaborated scam. Remember this scenario, we're going to come back to it in a moment. In the next recent case from this year, the scammers targeted senior executives from WPP company. WPP is one of the largest global advertising companies, and they did it by impersonating the CEO of the company. So what they did, they used the public image of the CEO to create a WhatsApp account Then they used that WhatsApp account to set up Microsoft Teams video call with one of the heads of the company and senior executives. And during that meeting, they asked them to set up a new business in an attempt to get access to personal details and money. They followed the attack by messaging in the same Teams channel, but in this case, one of the targets, one of the senior executives, had doubts, and they raised them directly with the CEO, and that's when the fraud was discovered. But in this case, no one was heard. So in this case, the scammers also use sophisticated voice and video clones, and for the video clone of the CEO, they use publicly available YouTube videos. So, if technology is equal, both cases, sophisticated voice and video clones that tricked people in believing they were communicating with real personas while it was just identity clones. If that part was equal, why then the fraud was successful in one case and not in another? So let's have a look at social engineering tactics behind these two scenarios. What do they have in common? First, trust. In both cases, scammers impersonated someone that the targets knew. In this case, it was work colleagues, and in this case, the CEO. So people they trusted. Second, secrecy, urgency. In both cases, the scammers asked for an action to be taken in secrecy and sometimes urgently, which can be very stressful, right? A target, any person in this position will be anxious to complete this action as soon as possible to get the weight off their shoulders. Next, power pressure. Both requests came from someone in very senior executive role and position. So we have someone they know personally and trust. They have secret urgent request to carry out that comes from someone in a very senior position, pressuring them to complete it urgently. And yet, in both cases, targets had their doubts, recognition. But only in one of them, the targets raised their concerns directly. What's different? Fact bombing. So in the first case, we have more points of proof or trust, so there were more work colleagues present on that call, while in the second case, we only had one CEO and two targets, which already changes the proportion. The targets, we had only one person here against multiple points of proof, and two targets here against one CEO. That already tells us that this is much more difficult case, because in this case, it requires much more fact bombing to make sure that they prevent the people from sharing their doubts and discovering the truth collectively. So that already tells us that this case scenario was much better orchestrated, and that brings me to the next point. Again, the target. In the first case, I hope you can see it, guys, there, the target, the worker, was in a non-executive role, while the targets in this case were both in senior executive roles. And why is that important? So these two roles have very different daily routines and mental habits. Someone in a senior executive role is used to make decisions that impact others almost on a daily basis, and that requires evaluating situation, factors, risks independently before taking an action. While someone in non-executive role, I've lost that, here we go, is in position to execute requests that come from someone else, from above. Yes, decision-making is super important, but all that person needed to be convinced and comfortable is that the people that placed this request were real, and that happened with the video call, without challenging the request itself. After all, it's $25.6 million. But they didn't do that because it's not expected of them in their role. And this case have been successful because social engineering was so much better orchestrated, because the fraudsters understood what that person needed to be convinced to carry out their request. These scammers understood the habitual behavior patterns of that person, and they used it. And that brings us to the habitual behavior trap. What is habitual behavior trap? So you might have heard about habitual thinking. These are cognitive models of behavior that are ingrained in us, in our brain, by habits and beliefs that we acquire over time. These cognitive models tell us how to behave and interact with other people in certain situations. For example, if you're in a non-executive role, here we go. The point isn't working, but never mind. So if you're in a non-executive role, then most likely you used to receive requests for to execute projects, tasks, jobs from someone in senior leadership position or your management, and you're used to carry them out because A, you recognize the authority of the person, and B, you recognize your responsibility to complete this task as part of doing a good job without challenging it. If you take a dentist scenario, then we usually trust the dentist that they know what they're doing while they dig in our mouths, and we sit still and tolerate certain amount of discomfort. For some people, that implies tolerating pain as well, right? It's personal. And if you're going through a job search, then you're prepared to be asked lots of questions by a recruiter and give you best answers so that you can get what you want: a better role, better job, better pay, better environment, and so on. All of these behaviors are like driving for an experienced driver. We do it without thinking why we do what we do. And that's why, here we go, fraudsters rely heavily on using our habitual behavior and habitual thinking traps in executing and orchestrating their scams. Because yes, technology is very helpful, and deepfake and AI technology really helps make identity clone scenarios and scams realistic, but it's social engineering that makes them successful. It's that ability to predict the human behavior and design a situation that leads the target into the trap of fulfilling the fraudster's request. All that person in the first case needed to do is to verify this call to action before carrying action directly with their leadership or management. Not doing so costed the company $25.6 million. And what we need to know from this case, and also for businesses, according to the DHS report, in the near future, we're going to witness escalation of such deep, very elaborate, orchestrated, high-stake, high-profile attacks as scammers are trying to take advantage of the closing window of opportunity because public awareness of such identity clones is growing. Now, let's have a look at another type of fraud, which is low impact by high probability, widespread a scam. And we're going to look at the recruitment scams. Now, recruitment scam is nothing new. It's happening all the time, and they vary in degree of elaboration. We're going to use those that are aided by AI and deepfake. So here is the scenario. So what's happening at the moment across Europe and America is scammers are using AI to create fake job listings on very reputable websites like LinkedIn and Indeed. These scammers do not reach out to you directly because they are smarter than that. And they also use AI to generate very legitimate looking communication and artifacts that confirm to you that the situation is real. So once someone applies for that job or bites a hook, so to say, a target will be put through the hiring process, one interview or even series of interviews, while when they're going to be asked to share their personal details, such as social security number, driving license number, or even bank account number for direct debits. And in some of the USA cases, some victims were asked to share login details to websites like ID.me. This particular website verifies digital identities of people that interact with the government services like Internal Revenue Services. And once the scammers get what they want, communication ceases. They disappear. No job, no communication. Which happens in the world of recruitment as well, right? We apply for jobs, we don't hear back. So when police interviewed the victims and targets, not many people suspected anything funny, wrong, or strange. They didn't even realize they were scammed. So that's the identity fraud. Obviously, all of those details were stolen to be used in other scams. Yep, we're getting there. Thank you very much. Let me ask you a question. Do you think you would share your personal details with a recruiter before you were hired? And for example, if a recruiter made you feel so comfortable during the interview, implying that you're perfect for the job, that you're full of excitement, and then it follows by an email that says, congratulations, you progressed to the next stage of an interview, and we just need to verify your personal details or do a security check. And if by this time you've spent weeks and months looking for a new job, going through ridiculous interviews, not hearing from recruiters, and you're desperate. And if scammers went even farther and send you a fake letter of offer, then sending you to certain website, asking you to share details because they need to do security check on you. An honest answer for many of us, probably we wouldn't even try to check if Vacarda was real at any stage of the process. And that's why social engineering attacks are so dangerous and successful, because scammers heavily rely on our habitual behavior and thinking to execute their scams. Because most likely in this scenario, we would be sitting in that chair like in a dentist, at a dentist appointment, tolerating that discomfort and thought that something is funny, and yet carrying on with it because we only see what we want to see. So now let's have a look at how social engineering attacks really work. Right. So first stage is targeting. This is when scammers identify their targets, research and analyze their behavior, responses within a certain situation, and they design a trap, the ritual, routine, and the fake facts. Then they place contact. This is when they place a hook. It can be a fake advertisement, an email, or direct message. And once the victim buys the hook, let's say at this point is still a target, fact bombing begins. So think about fact bombing as staging a theater stage. We know the settings are fake, but there will be real furniture, real furnishings, windows, doors, even lighting, real people, and they talk real, so you buy into it. So there are lots of facts, and this is when technology comes in, video, voice, evidence, references. So all of this is used to A, make sure that you believe the situation is real, and B, reinforce your habitual behavior trap. This is when our biases of familiarity and confirmation kick in. And then they follow through, further leading their targets through the funnel towards the final action. And this leading stage, scammers usually use tactics like tactical empathy, flattery, time, urgency pressure, power pressure, everything to lead their targets towards taking that call to action. And once the target implements what they want the target to do, they disappear. I'm going to ask you, does this funnel remind you something? Maybe sales funnel, marketing funnel, how we acquire our targets and get to call to action. That's because the core and the foundation at all stages of this funnel is the psychology, understanding of our behavior, routines, what incentivizes us to take action and what does not. And technology comes on the fact bombing stage. So those people who were able to identify fraud, deepfake and AI facilitated fraud without any use of technology understood the funnel. And they could understand that there is something else going on. They were not stuck in this fact bombing phase when their bias of confirmation familiarity were activated. And that's what you need to know. So what does the rise in deepfake AI facilitated scams mean for the future? So here I'm quoting from the US Department of Homeland Security report. We expect an emerging threat landscape wherein the attacks will become easier and more successful, and the efforts to counter and mitigate these threats will need orchestration and collaboration by government, industry, and society. So yes, we're entering a very dangerous phase in technology and our society. But I hope in the very near future, very good sophisticated deepfake technology will be available on our gadgets. The problem is by this time, social engineering attacks will evolve, move to new scenarios, creating new threats. And that means at all stages and always, we have to rely on our awareness and ability to recognize the signs of manipulation, even despite what our mind might be telling us, and then act on it. Because to prevent an incident, it's not enough to detect an anomaly. Recognition needs to lead to action. And taking an action is also a habit that requires consistent practice to develop. The best defense against all of those fraud scenarios that we have looked at today is not a sophisticated technology, but as simple as picking up a phone and verifying contact directly from the source. And even better, verify 6-3 independent sources of verification from the people or website sources you know. And if you can't do even that, then simply Google it. Internet is full of personal accounts, stories, and reports that can tell you what's really happening. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you. Am I in time? Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Tanya, for that. I have to admit, as soon as I saw this, my mind was blown when it got to the conference part, where it's like not just one person, but multiple people in the room. Mm-mm. But we do have time for questions if anyone has a question.
Go girl.
Hi, thanks so much. That was like literally so mind blowing. The one where they were impersonating lots of colleagues on the call. I think that's literally the scariest part of this. But how would they have gotten the data they needed to do that? Like, how would they have gotten the videos they needed to train the model?
You mean technically, right?
Yeah, or just like, what's the source of that? Like, would it have to have been somebody that the target knew very personally? Like, how are they getting? How are they impersonating those colleagues?
Right. So
That it's
yeah.
believable.
Let me just try to get it back to you just to make sure I understand. Are you interested in how the technology works, how they were able to make such good sophisticated clones, or are you interested about how they got the data about the work colleagues?
The second one, like, what's the source?
Right. Okay.
Is that not?
There are multiple sources, right? So they could have an insider. So I showed you one recruitment scenario when the recruit is fake. There is another fake recruitment scenario where the employees they hire are fake. So that also works for business identity fraud, and it's getting very popular. So where you can hire someone, they go through all your security checks, they get access to your systems, and they disappear in a week and tell you, sorry, that your culture doesn't work for me, or resign. But they get access to all your systems. So that's one of the things. Second thing, once you identify the target, remember we're talking about $25.6 million. So you observe their routine, where they go, do they drink, do they go to the bar after that? If that's a man, for example, what kind of women they like, let's play on that, get a drink, share things. My previous presentation was on romance scam when I engaged with romance scammers for a week. And while I was doing that online, I was chatting to lots of men, and lots of men told me what they should not have been telling me about their businesses literally within a few hours of conversation. So it's all down to manipulation. You can just, if you know how to get information you want from someone, as long as you're in that personal contact. Second, LinkedIn. Just Google the company, see who they work with. Then go to a conference, meet those people, see how they behave, check the sources. Is there video or images publicly available? Now, deepfake technology is so accessible, you don't need to have sophisticated YouTube videos. Sometimes it's enough to have just photo of that person. LinkedIn is full of that data. Conferences, you bump into people all the time. All you need to, when you do spear phishing attack, follow that person where they go for a week or so or more. 25 million, it's worth it.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
Good.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.